My name is Phil Wright. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate each of you being here. This December, my wife and I will have been married for 40 years. We have 7 children and 15 grandchildren. I was born in California, raised in Georgia and California country. My dad was a gambler and an alcoholic. In his later years, gave all that up and became a wonderful grandfather. I am an author. I've written several books. I've lectured throughout the country, been very involved in civic things, and I spent most of my career in the financial world. I've also been a writer, producer, and director for television programs and occasionally an on-camera talent. In 2013, I decided to write a book, in 2012 actually, and it was called Not Without Mercy. It was a story of a family that survived the Black Plague in Bristol, England in 1348, sorry. And thinking who would write their first book about the Black Plague. But it was really an interesting experience. I was halfway through writing the book, and I discovered the main character was an ancestor of mine. And then I started having amazing experiences where he would come to me in the middle of the night after writing a chapter, and he would say, "That's not how it happened." So I'd go and rewrite the chapter and get it right. That happened over and over and over again. My wonderful wife, I would tell her these things, she'd always smile, and she never questioned it. And one night I was praying, and I said, "Lord, please give Sean just one glimpse. Let her see one glimpse from these people that have been coming so she can know for a fact that what I'm telling her is true." So one morning, I was in the shower. I just got out of the shower. I was getting dressed. And I heard my wife, who was still asleep in bed, and she was making a lot of noise. So I thought, oh, she must be having a nightmare. So I went over to the bed, and then I saw her wrestling, laying on, screaming and wrestling in the bed as if she was being attacked. And I woke her up. I said, "Sean, are you okay?" And she threw her arms around me and gave me a hug and said, "I had the most horrible nightmare." I said, "What did you dream?" She said, "I dreamt that I was somewhere in Europe." And she described this strange looking building, the different type of brick and architecture and the wood that was in the building. And then she said, then I was inside the building and I was on a bed and this demon was attacking me. And I looked at her and I said, hang on one second. And I went and grabbed my laptop and I read the chapter to her that I had just written the night before on that very subject. So I learned something. When you ask the Lord for something, be specific. He did give her a glimpse of what I was seeing, but he gave her this horrible experience. So anyway, about 2 years ago, a friend and I decided to write a book on something I never thought I would even make public, much less than about. And this is, I'm a Christian. I believe in. I also believe that there are beings from other worlds, many of them who have visited our planet for eons of time. And I was a little frustrated at the Christians on one side of the spectrum and the alien believers on the other. The Christians who don't believe that God created anybody except us. And I think it's a bit arrogant to try and limit the Creator. And then those on the extreme side of the aliens who no longer believe in God and believe that aliens created us. So through my I wanted to write something to bring both groups together to help them understand there is one Creator. It doesn't matter to me what people think, visualize when I say that, but there's one Creator who created worlds without number. Many look just like this planet, and he put people just like us everywhere. And there are people who don't look just like us in other places. So we decided we would write this book, and I called it a parable based on true events for a couple of reasons. One, having been abducted many times throughout my life since I was a small boy, we live in a society where up until most recently it's been very difficult for anybody to kind of come out of the alien closet and say, hey, me. Because you're a charlatan or a kook. Couldn't risk my career if I discuss things like that in public. So we wrote this book in a story format, telling the story from the beginning throughout the first years of the main character we call Connor and his older brother, who was also abducted. So, start this presentation, I have a couple of questions I want to ask you. And if you don't want to raise your hands, that's okay. But I have the opinion after attending that panel last night that most people who are here are not afraid to speak the truth. They're not afraid to say who they are or what's happened to them. So my first question, how many of you have seen an unidentified flying object? Okay. How many of you believe that you've been abducted? Now, this surprises me that not one hand, because as I've given a similar presentation in other conferences, a lot of hands go up. How many know someone who has been abducted? Okay, this is where you should all raise your hands because I started by telling you, and I introduced myself to everybody here. Now, you can say you know someone, at least someone who claims to be abducted, because you don't know for sure, but it's just my word, and my older brother's word, and my mother's word, and the word of many other people. How many believe the fire in Lahaina, Maui was caused by natural lightning strikes? Anybody? How many believe our government had something to do with that? How many believe that alien beings could have had something to do with that? It's 50-50. It's either or both. I'm here to tell you that was not a natural event. Live there. I've been to Lahaina many times. If you watch the different things on YouTube, because you won't hear it from the news, the experiences of people who live there or who were visiting tell you what they saw. They saw these strange beams come from the sky and blow things up, turn things into fire. There's video of automobiles up on the hill far from Lahaina that are burned so bad that their metal has melted and there's no burn marks around them. That's not a lightning strike that just happened to hit some unlucky SUV. The harbor was destroyed by fire. That's impossible. But I'll tell you what the most telling thing is for me, and the most horrible thing for me, and this is what the news won't tell you. 1,000 children are missing from Lahaina. 2,000 children are missing. They closed the school that day. And they blocked the only main street out of there so people couldn't even leave. What happened to these 2,000 children? Of course, we know there are thousands of people who died. Some of them burned to the point where they'll never be recognized. But what happened to all the children? You know, I guess we don't know yet. I think one day we'll find out. So I'm one of these people who likes to look at the night sky. I'm sure all of you do, or you wouldn't be here. And I'm very blessed to live in a little town an hour and a half north of Kansas City. Around us, we're on about 125 acres. It is so beautiful. At night, I can see everything. Light pollution. But when I look at the sky, I always think, who's looking back at me? Have you ever done that? You're looking way out in the sky and you're wondering, is there someone just like you who's looking back at you? I've never questioned the reality that there are people because of what I experienced. People argue about how old the earth is. Especially you've got the Christians and the scientists. They'll argue. Years old, and the scientists say it's hundreds of thousands or even millions of. And I don't know the answer to that. I didn't come here to talk about how old the earth is, other than it's a question that I believe both are right. because I believe when the Lord said, we will go down, there is space there, and we will take of these materials and we will make an earth whereon these may dwell, that he was taking of materials already existed, putting them or reorganizing them. If you look at the word create in the Bible, the Hebrew word is bara, which means to organize. God, the creator, organized this world from existing particles. To me, explain, there would be archaeology that's millions of years old or hundreds of thousands of years old of habitation. And I can accept that. And to me, that answers my question as a Christian. Yes, I do believe there was a 6,000 year creation period or a 6-day creation period, but I believe it was creating and reorganizing what had already been there, which means there could have been others there. All right, I'm going to skip through a couple of these since we're starting late. So can a Christian believe in God and also in aliens from other worlds? I'm here to tell you yes. And I know others who believe there are aliens, beings that live on other planets. A lot of people get hung up with the idea of what does an alien look like? Are they little with big heads and big eyes? Are they and what do they look like? And I used to struggle with some of the more far out descriptions of aliens that people write about or claim that they had seen. But then one day, I'm a 6'2" Caucasian. If you put me next to an Aborigine, we'd look like two different beings, yet we're from the same planet. We're created by the same creator. So I am one of the last people who will try and limit what the creator can create. If he wants to create people to look just like you and me, or if he wants to create people that look very, very different, I'm sure there's a purpose for it, and I can accept that. I like the quote by Carl Sagan that the universe is a pretty big place. If it's just us, it seems like an awful waste of space. Again, I think it's arrogant for anybody to think that we're the planet. And the cool thing is, because of the advent of our incredible telescopes like the Hubble telescope and what's the newer one, the James Webb, discovering that there are trillions of galaxies out there, universes and galaxies within them and Earth-like planets. It seems so obvious that there are going to be people just like you and me and people that are not just like you and me scattered throughout the universe. So I want to show just a couple of short clips of others seen way back in history who have seen UFOs and didn't know what they were. This one was back in 1492, and those of you who know your history will know exactly what this is.
October 11th, 1492, 10 p.m. A calm, clear night. Christopher Columbus and his crew moved slowly across one of the deepest ravines of the Atlantic and through the fire. Below them is almost 4 miles of water. Suddenly, unearthly lights are seen flashing across the bottom of the ocean.
This person's name was Gutierrez, and Gutierrez was on the Santa Maria with Christopher Columbus. Noticed an object rising out of the water, a disc-shaped object.
Flash of light with a level of brilliance unknown at the time suddenly erupts from the sea to the sky. Columbus and his crew of 120 aboard the 3-ship Spanish fleet. In less than 5 hours, they would discover the New World.
And Christopher Columbus maintained a log in the ship. It describes what could be interpreted as a UFO event. They saw in the description given in the logbook the and down. It could have been a campfire on the ground because it was beyond the horizon.
October 11th, 1492 sighting was not an isolated occurrence. Over the 2-month journey, Columbus's log exhibits a consistent pattern of cryptically reported peculiar incidents, including unexpected sightings and unusual events in outer space. Entry September 17th and September 20th indicate that stars are seen to move. The cause was that the star moved from its place, but the needles remained stationary. Is it possible that these strange events, recorded during the most fabled journey in history, were the result of otherworldly vessels tracking Columbus's fleet?
I think the answer to that is an obvious yes. It's interesting to me because there are so many recorded sightings in history that go back hundreds and hundreds of years of people seeing alien ships. But remember, they're trying to explain it in their own vernacular. They're trying to explain it with what they understand. That's why candles, because that's how they had light. He wouldn't have known to say it was a UFO. He wouldn't have known to say a little ship with lights. He wouldn't have known all that. So they use their own vernacular on how they describe things. We could spend hours about that. I want to show you just a couple more examples. 5 years before the famous Roswell saucer event that happened not too far from here, there was an event that happened the 25th of February, 1942, the attack on Los Angeles. How many have heard about that? That was so amazing because the entire city went black. And the military had their lights, as you can see in this picture, this is an actual photograph, up in the sky, pointing in this one direction. And they shot off thousands of at this one direction. Now, still, it is today, but in 1942, it was still one of the largest cities in America. Hundreds of thousands of people witnessed this event and had no idea what was going on. Air sirens are on, people are running in their houses. When it was over, the military said it was, nothing more than a drill. How do you have a drill and close down one of the largest cities in America and turn off their power? This lasted for several hours until the early morning. Now, there are a lot of after-the-fact stories. Some claim that the military did shoot down a couple of ships, maybe as many as 3, and that they did gather some alien beings and alien technology. But those who lived there were just told that it was nothing more than a military event, nothing to. Now, there's an event that happened even before Roswell, and you'll have a hard time finding this if you Google it, because the military doesn't want you to know about it. But in 1940, in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, an alien ship crashed, and 4 beings were found, and they were the typical gray-looking beings. The military immediately went there to salvage everything, and somebody called a local preacher and asked him if he would come pray for the dead beings they found. So he gets there, and there's some humans, and he's shocked when he finds out that there are these little gray aliens. And then he's told, like everyone else there, you are not allowed to ever speak about this event. And I'm sure he was threatened and so on. So he didn't speak. But on his deathbed, as a very old man, he spoke to his granddaughter and told her the story of what he had seen. This is a story that I didn't even know about a year ago. And it was just as dramatic as what happened in Roswell. But they were able to quickly hide that one faster than Roswell. Okay. You can read, I'm going to go back because there's a website I want you to be able to go to called UFOcasebook.com. And there you can get that whole story. UFOcasebook.com. All right. How many have heard of the Phoenix Lights? How many were here and saw the Phoenix Lights? Oh, I was hoping I'd get at least one hand up on that one. This is another one. How do you explain this one away? What did the military do? What did our government say was what it was that people saw? What did they claim it was? What's the common answer our military gives anytime. Gas. What else do they claim? Flares, lanterns, a balloon, right? A balloon. Yeah. Well, the U.S. military seems to know a lot more about UFOs than they're telling us. And my frustration is that for decades, they've covered up the facts and hidden the truth of the most elusive, agile, and fastest UFO ever known to man. This thing is so fast, it's impervious to weapons. It can move beyond the speed of light. It can even dive into the ocean and come back out. And the military knows all about it because they're always telling us about it. It's this military weather balloon. Isn't it amazing what it can do? I thought, with all the billions of dollars that the Congress gives to the military every year, with this weapon, they could have put Dorothy Oz with an AK-47 and they could take out anybody they wanted with this weapon. Now, I know that sounds stupid, but how stupid does our government think we are? Now they call it a UAP. Almost every single UFO sighting, the government uses this explanation. I think that the American public, the world as a whole, is waking up to the reality that it's not other balloons, it's not military balloons, it's beings from other worlds. You remember that we recently had several people testify to Congress, whistleblowers, insiders, people with incredible, impeccable credentials and security levels, talking about the many beings and craft that our military, our government, has captured over the years to reverse engineer. I want to show you another interesting thing that you may not.
They were actually looking for of champagne, of all things, when they encountered something which they picked up on their sonar. And when they looked at this thing, they realized there was something down there.
Their sonar displayed a remarkable image. The mysterious object, now known as the Baltic Sea anomaly, is unlike anything the treasure hunters have seen. After diving down to get a better look, the explorers find the object to be shaped like a perfectly round saucer, 60 meters in diameter, with a rock-like exterior. One explanation was that this was the gun turret or the remains of a sunken battleship or submarine or something to that effect, but there's no record of anything going down in the area that this can be connected to. So, what is it? We ultimately just have no idea. Well, this unusual object on the bottom of the Baltic Sea, if you look at it, it looks like something that would be a science fiction movie that's meticulously put together to do something, to perform something. How big it is, I can't tell from this, but that's something that was made by currents on the bottom of the ocean. Somebody made that.
The object, whatever it is, looks like the Millennium Falcon from the Star Wars movies. It's got geometric patterns to it, and it does look like kind of a craft. There are people who believe it's an alien base or even a petrified alien ship. If somehow an alien craft is able to turn to stone, whatever this is, it's not something I don't think that formed organically at the bottom of the bed.
Mainstream scientists believe the strange object is a natural geological formation. But what if they're wrong? Could the sonar image actually be evidence of an underwater spacecraft of extraterrestrial origin?
There are rumors that there have been samples taken at a layered metallic structure, which would have to be manufactured. So the Baltic Sea anomaly is not explainable today. It's not being researched in public that we know of, but it does have a lot of characteristics that indicate it might be from another world.
What we're looking at is probably an ancient crash site. There's definitely a skid mark you can see from skipping or hitting the bottom, and so it was definitely moving when it crashed. The strange object really is an alien vehicle. Why does it appear to be made of stone? We all know what a petrified tree is. It was once alive and it became stone over time. So if this thing is petrified UFO down there, maybe it was alive and wasn't metal at all. Maybe it was some kind of living biological machine. I think what they've found is probably some kind of ancient fossilized UFO. Every now and again in human history, we seem to get lucky and find a whole piece of evidence that seems to lean toward extraterrestrial presence here on Earth for a long, long time.
This isn't something that is natural and that was formed over time. There are very deliberate patterns on this object. So could it be that this is a crash? Objects crashing on land. So why wouldn't we have something?
Whoops. I didn't mean to do that. I don't know about you, but I think it's a weather balloon. It looked just like a weather balloon to me. So that's going to be my explanation. And we also know that the U.S. Senate Intelligence Authorization Act for 2023, they talked about, I'm going to skip to this, they talked about cross-domain medium threat. Now, this was a report given to the U.S. Congress where they were saying, we have problems with aircraft that are trans-medium. And what that means is they can come from the water, from the sky, or just appear. And they're coming into our airspace illegally. It's a threat to our nation. This was a report to Congress. Congress is aware of what's happening. Our government is aware of what's happening. It's not weather balloons. We know the government isn't telling us everything, and the frustrating thing is most in the beginning are afraid to say anything because they don't want to be ridiculed or laughed at or be told that they're a liar or a kook. So it makes it difficult for people like you and me, the average citizen, to have credibility when we share our. So because of that, I want to share something briefly about a gentleman who is credible. His name is John D. Krumboltz. He's a professor of education psychology at Stanford University. And a very well-known author. He's written books. He's lectured all over the world. And he started at Stanford in 1961. He revolutionized the fields of behavioral and career counseling by applying social theories of learning and of life decisions. In his 6 decades as one of America's most influential psychologists, he was also co-director of the Stanford Graduate School of Education's program in counseling psychology and the widely read author of many scholarly books and papers. Sometime around the end of October of 2018, I received a strange text, and it said, "You need to read this book." And I replied to the text, and it said, "Number not found." I couldn't even reply to the person who sent me the book. So I looked at the book. It's called Their Finest Hour. Master Therapists Share Their Greatest Success Stories. And I thought, of all the books for me to read, I am not interested in a book written by therapists about therapy to read that. But I decided, since I had this strange text message telling me I should look at it, I got it on my Kindle. And I started thumbing through the chapter headings to see if there was anything that would catch my attention. Then I saw this. Dr. John Krumboltz, therapist, reveals his finest hour. And I thought, I know that guy. I met him in the mid-'80s when I was living in San Jose. I wonder what his finest hour was. After nearly 50 years in psychology, this highly respected researcher, educator, and lecturer considered that his finest hour, was the day he met a middle-aged man he referred to as Bill, who had been hiding a lifetime of alien abduction. Dr. Krumboltz, using regression therapy, helped this man remember and deal with some incredibly traumatic alien encounters. As Dr. Krumboltz was telling his story to the interviewers, this is what happened. They said things like, we interrupted the narrative at this point to ask John to what extent he believed what he had told Bill. It seemed to us that some alternative might be more viable. For instance, that Bill had been sexually abused as a child and had created this fantasy as a way to live with the experience. This is why most people never share being abducted, because this is what most therapists will tell them. Oh, you weren't abducted. You were molested by your crazy uncle or your father. We were also concerned that John Krumboltz, one of the living legends of our field, might be seen as a little strange for confessing that he believes in alien abductions. He said, I suppose you guys are entitled to think I'm cuckoo for believing my client, but I have to tell you, I've been studying this phenomenon for many years. You may think this sounds crazy, I'm skeptical as well. But I had some experiences when I was in the Air Force that convinced me otherwise. A few times UFOs that were confirmed by a witness. Now, I am not sure what to make of these things. It did teach me to be open to what people report, whether it happened the way they said it did or not. Dr. Krumboltz and Bill decided to record their 8 sessions together. Now, the following is a letter that Dr. Krumboltz received from Bill about a month later, and I think, it says, Dear John, enclosed here, please find the cassette tapes of our interviews. Thank you so much for spending so much of your valuable time with me. I really appreciate the help you gave me in dealing with the serious and frustrating issues of my encounters. Since most people consider encounters or even sightings of UFOs, finding someone like you who is open-minded enough to consider the possibility of such an event is great. Our world is very small compared to what is out there in our universe. I've always believed that it is extremely simple-minded and arrogant to assume that we are alone in this great universe. I said at the beginning that I'm one of the many, I believe, who knows without a doubt that we are not alone in the universe and that we are literally surrounded by thousands of intelligent beings from other worlds that come visit our planet for various reasons. Most are quite benevolent, some are not, some are quite the opposite. Some are here doing research to literally save their people. Others are here to cause havoc and harm. People like Dr. Krumboltz are the reason that I'm here today and that I'm no longer afraid to talk about UFOs and alien encounters. If credible professors from one of America's greatest universities like Stanford are willing to profess their belief in the UFO phenomenon, it makes it much easier for the rest of us to speak up. So I applaud Dr. Krumboltz and I applaud all of those others great credibility for speaking. I am here today because the real reason the book was recommended to me, I was a bit overwhelmed after reading the chapter that John, because it seemed so very familiar to me. So I sent him an email, and this is what I sent. Dr. Krumboltz, I just found that featured story of one of your patients, Bill. The chapter was treating the trauma of alien abduction. I know Bill very well, except he spells his name with a P, not a B. It has been years since I sat in your office one afternoon and opened myself up to the possibility of hypnosis to help with those experiences. I'm going to read it out here because I can't read it there. "25 years since our interaction, I've had a wonderful life. My wife and I are still married after 35 years, and we've been blessed to have 7 children and 10 grandchildren, although I've spent the majority of my life in a nonfiction book. From time to time in my life, I thought about that experience with you. The only way I found you after all these years was when I came across a cassette tape with a sticker that read Krumboltz /12, 1993. I didn't remember sending the other tapes back to you. And I'm wondering if you still have those tapes. I live near Salt Lake City, Utah, but I would enjoy meeting you again sometime. All the best to you, and thanks for believing in me. The next day, I got his response. Hi, Phil. I almost never throw anything away. If you ever get back to Stanford University, look me up. I have an office at the Stanford Education Building number. We sent an email back and forth for a couple of days, and it was very exciting. As I was writing my book about some of the events that took place in my life, my publicist said, Phil, what would be great is if you had some type of credible person who could verify some of the things you've written about. And I said, well, I know this guy named Humboldt, who's a professor, PhD, department chair at Stanford University. He says, oh my gosh, you need to call him immediately. This was 2 years after that email. And I called and no answer. I sent an email and I got a return message, not available. Then I got online and found out that he had passed away at age 90. But I appreciate Dr. Krumboltz. Appreciate his willingness to take these things seriously and to try and help people who have dealt with abduction. It's not an easy thing. As I was writing my book, my editor would say, if you could meet anybody who you had experiences with, who would you want to meet? And I said, it's not who I would want to meet, who I hope is still alive, that didn't take their life because the world didn't take them seriously. That's always been my biggest concern. People who are abducted or who are abducted multiple times, they have no one to talk to, nowhere to go. No one would believe them. So they end up taking their lives instead, or they become homeless and check out of society. Shame. The opportunity to get reacquainted with a person I met at 10 years old. We were both abducted at the same time. And after publishing my book, I found him. And that was pretty exciting. So I want to share something I've never done in one of these presentations. I want to share a couple of experiences that I had. Including one that came back to me from my 8 sessions with Dr. Krumboltz. And I hope that sharing it will be helpful to somebody. Most of my experiences happened as a young boy with my older brother who's still alive, so I've got to corroborate. And he doesn't like to talk about these things anymore. And when I wrote the book and sent him a copy, he said, you got it right, but I'm really mad. And I said, why are you mad? He says, because I stopped having those nightmares years ago, and now I'm going to start having them again. But for me, it was there. I needed to do it. I remember when my brother and I were 8 and 9, we were living in California in a little town called Prunedale. Stupid name. Anyway, we had bedrooms that were connected by a Jack and Jill bathroom. So there's a bathroom on the corner between the 2 bedrooms. I was sharing a bedroom with our older brother, who's 4 years older than I am. And my older brother is only 13 months older than I am. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up and it was pitch black in the house. I heard my name being repeated over and over. It was like, Philip, 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 Philip. And it was hypnotic. And I remember sitting up in bed, knowing that I was not in control of my body. My bed, and I thought, they're coming again. Scream. I need to let my parents know, but I couldn't speak. Door in the bathroom, and I was walking towards the door, and then I saw this bright light coming from underneath the door. So I figured, right, save me. And then the door opened, and I saw these two small beings that I had seen many other occasions. And one of them put his hand out, told me to come. And I resisted, but still had to keep moving. And as soon as I got into the bathroom, I saw the other side bathroom door was open, and my older brother was standing there too. Of these beings, one of them stepped on the toilet, climbed out the window on top of the garage, and from my brother and I, and pulled us through that same window. Then the other two were standing behind us, and we're all standing on the garage. And then I look up, and something pulls all of us up. I couldn't see anything. Some beam of some sort just lifted us all up and pulled us into this ship. And it was very familiar. I had been there before. And a few moments later, I remember opening my eyes, and I'm laying on a table, a very metallic table. It was cold. The interior of the ship looked honeycomb. All of the wall was kind of rounded, and the walls were kind of honeycomb, and there was a dim amber light glowing through the room. So it's the actual lights, just everything kind of glowed. And I looked up and saw all of these instruments hanging above me. And then I was able to turn my head and look to the side, and I saw my brother about 15 feet away laying on a table as well. I'm not going into detail of what they did, but at one point, they caused me to sleep. And when I woke up, I looked over and saw my brother. He sat up from the table, got off the table, and attacked. He was 9 years old, attacked one of these beings. And he reared back, punched it in the face as he could, and it slammed against the wall, and its head broke open, and it died. Next thing I knew, these beings are scattering around, kind of making strange noises, and they put my brother back on the table. And I remember walking toward them, they pointed something at him and shot him, and he fell on the table, and I thought they'd killed my brother. And I ran toward them and said, what have you done? And as I'm running toward them, they must have shot me because I blacked out. The next thing I knew, a door appeared in the side of this ship, and this bright light coming in, and I could smell the atmosphere of the air. And they put us in these, like a glowing rope that was tied around our waist, and we were also tied to them, and we were being led out of the ship onto the ground. And I thought, oh, this is great. We're home. But then when I'm looking around, everything looked very different. And I looked off to my right, and way down, hundreds of feet, I see a purple ocean, bright purple water. And I was terrified because I realized I was far from home. And as we were walking, one of these beings received some type of signal and turned his hand over and looked at this signal. Whatever him, it terrified him, and he told the others back to the ship. He ran us all back to the ship, and I remember running through kind of mud. And I'm thinking, as I'm running towards the ship, I'm barefoot in pajamas, I'm thinking, I'm going to get mud inside of their ship. But as soon as my foot went through the doorway, it just completely cleaned everything off. We were completely clean. We were taken back to the ship. We were laid back down. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up in my bed early that next morning. And the first thing I did is ran to my brother and said, do you remember? And he threw his arms around me and said, I remember it. We always remembered that experience as well as many others. One of the things that I discovered I believe, with alien abduction, People will think in the Men in Black where they put the light and make you forget. Yeah, I don't believe that. I think it's your mind. It's the trauma in your mind that locks away those traumas so you don't have to deal with them anymore. Some of them I remembered my whole life, and so did my brother. But it wasn't until I went through hypnosis and some other things that happened in my life that suddenly all of the memories opened up and I was able to remember all kinds of things. I thought it ended when I was 10 or 11. It didn't. It continued, and it continued with my brother, who no longer wants to talk about it. Another experience I had at age 15, we were living in Georgia. I moved about 27 times growing up. Even though I initially had a device put in my shoulder and it was eventually removed, it didn't matter. They found us anyway. I was at a scout camp. Just finished the scout camp, and they dropped us off at this church that we were attending. There, and they were doing a quilting thing or something, and my mom was one of these dozen women. And I'm there with my friend named, I think we're both 14 years old. And we're sitting on the front steps of this church, and we look up, and Terry says, "Hey, what is that?" And we see this round light about the size of a silver dollar coming towards us. And we're thinking, oh, it's a plane. No, it's a helicopter. No, what? And it's getting bigger and bigger. And then we see that it has colored lights running around the side of it, and it's saucer-shaped, coming towards us. And I remember Terry was freaking out. He was absolutely terrified. I had to calm him down. For some reason, I was fine. I was calm. Just close, and it came over the church, and it hovered over the church, probably 1,000 feet in the air, and then it came down so low that it was easily covering a city block or more. And we could see the metal work on the bottom. We could see the strip where the light was spinning and bright light in the middle. Then it lifted up and disappeared. So we quickly ran into the church and told all these women, "We just saw a UFO. It was amazing. It was amazing." And guess what their response was? Silly boys, leave us alone." So we went to the back of the church and sat on the back parking lot waiting for my dad and older brother to get there to pick us up. A few minutes later, my dad and older brother show up. And as soon as they park and get out of the car, and my brother towards me, we're running towards them. And we're both, "I don't believe what we just saw." My dad and brother were away in the middle of nowhere on a small Georgia highway. They saw this same ship. And it came down and hovered my dad's car, and my dad never believed in UFOs, and it terrified him. So he steps on the gas. You know, you can outrun a UFO if you're really good. And it keeps up with him. Then he hits his brakes, and it stops. And a few minutes later, it goes up and disappears. So they're telling us their story. We're telling them our story outside. And then we look up, and it's back right above the church, and it's slowly coming down. Now, I had seen it already, so I bolted into that church, and I'm screaming for my mom, for any of those women, "Get out here now, it's here." We got all 12 of those women out into the grassy area of the church. Everyone's looking up, and it's very low again. One of the ladies, she passes out immediately, rolls in the grass. We ignored her. Then this beautiful bright light came down and engulfed this group of about 15 of us, and we're just looking at it. And it was amazing. Probably lasted for 5 minutes. The light slowly dissipated and it's not like when you turn a light on, there's light. It's like the light slowly came down and slowly went back up. Then the ship went up and it was gone. Those they were gone. When my brother and I excited, and I said to my mom, "I can hardly wait till Sunday when all these women can tell everybody what we saw." So Sunday we go back to church, and guess what? Not one person said a thing. I was so mad. I said to my mom, Mom, how can this be? I know she saw that. She saw that. How can nobody say anything? You know what her response was? We don't talk about those things. About 4 months ago, I was giving a presentation at a very different conference than this. A gentleman came up to me and said, I need to meet you. My mother-in-law purchased your book, and I feel like I need to meet you. So for a couple of minutes. And this happened in Sandy Springs, Georgia. And he lived in Sandy Springs, Georgia. And he was about 2 years older than me. And my eyes got big. And I said, so you would, yeah. He said, I went to the same church you went to. And I said, so you know about that? And he cut me off and he said, that beautiful UFO that came over the building? Yeah, I know all about it. I said, did you see it? He said, no, but I heard about it for years. 48 years after that experience, I met a stranger who saw the same thing. It's happening everywhere. And I am somewhat pleased that our American government is to release, but they've only given us this much. They know about weather balloons that would blow us away, right? I know that there's so much more coming out, and I also know in the coming months and years, some very devastating things are going to be happening in this country. And the eyes of people like us are quacks and kooks. Their eyes will be opened when they see beings from other worlds walking in our halls of Congress, walking in our streets. This, my friends, is not going to be a good thing. Being a Christian and believing in the Bible, I also believe that the lost 10 tribes will return. I believe they're on another planet, and they will redeem our country from the evil that is here. They will come, as the Old Testament says, on the ships of with great power. It will be more miraculous than the parting of the Red Sea. That was pretty miraculous. I believe that they will come with great alien technology, and the whole world is going to have their eyes open. So I don't claim to know all the answers. I'm here who's written a book, and he kind of makes that claim, and that's okay. I can only verify what I know. If someone has seen a being that seems to be wild and strange and odd to me, I used to say, that can't be. Now I say, you know what? I don't know. Maybe. One thing I know, I don't need anybody in this room or watching this. I don't need anybody to believe or confirm what I already know to be true. And I would tell you the same thing. If you've had an experience, it doesn't matter whether or not your spouse, your friend, your family believe. None of that matters. What matters is what you know is true. And you can't let that go. You can't let some kook therapist tell you that you were molested by your father or you're crazy. Oh, probably shouldn't use the term crazy Uncle Joe. Crazy Uncle Hector. Sorry, a little bit of politics there. But either way, I'm grateful that I can be here. I'm grateful for the experiences I've had in my life. I would not want to relive any of them. But I'm here. I have all of my fingers. Other people in this world who were brutally murdered and mutilated, they experienced things much worse than I did because I'm alive and I can talk about it. So the book that I wrote it with a friend of mine. It's called Return from Risa. And two little boys. We were very blessed. We were very blessed to have the assistance of a world-renowned #1 New York Times bestselling author, 21 times, who wrote Fable Haven and lots of those fantasy fiction stories. He helped with the life is our author. We also had the help of a wonderful religious author named Michael B. Rush, who's And this book has been a blessing in my life. I received an email from a lady in Australia who purchased the book. I don't think she had believed in God, and she wrote, "Phil, I can't thank you enough for writing a book to help me believe in God." And then she added, "and to accept that Jesus is the Christ." This is not what you would think with this cover, that this is going to be a book that talks about God. But it's not preachy. Preaching religion in it. It's not preachy. It's based on truth. It's based on things that actually happened. The story is, the first book is called Angels and Aliens. It's how this little boy was being abducted, but God also gave him angels that helped him deal with what he was going through much of his early childhood. Had more, running out of time, and I appreciate everyone being here. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions, or we can talk afterwards. Yes. Yeah, she asked if hypnotherapy was how I got my memories back. I met with Dr. Krumboltz 8 times total, probably 20 hours, because we would spend time talking before, then we would spend time, he recorded it, and then we would talk after, because there were many times afterwards where I was just freaking out, and he had to calm me down and bring me back to earth, so to speak. But anyway, I just forgot your question. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I remember. Did hypnosis? No, it did not. As a matter of fact, by the time I got to that 8th session, it was so traumatic. I said, "Thank you so much. I'm healed. I'm all better. I'm great." And he says, "No, I really want to see you on Monday." He says, "No, I'm fine." Couldn't deal with anymore. It brought back a ton of stuff, but just in the last 3 and 4 years, many more things have come back. Really helped me in writing the book. So, all right. Any other questions? Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Enjoy the rest of the conference.